And thank you all for having me. I want to start off by saying greetings to you on behalf of myself, the United Church of Christ, our General Minister and President, Reverend John C. Dorhauer, my Senior Minister with Extravagance, United Church of Christ, Reverend Dr. Joe Hudson, and my colleagues within the United Church of Christ. I am so blessed to be here with you all today, and I'm so excited to share with you what we have done. This is one of a few projects with online ministry that we are engaged in, that I am personally engaged in. But before we begin all of that, what I would like to do is start with a moment of prayer. If you are so inclined, you can bow your heads, but if that's not for you, that's fine as well. Holy One, thank you for this opportunity to be before these your people. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. For you give us strength and you redeem us. Amen. Thank you, Gabby. There was a point in the video, as humorous as some of the content presented was, that really stood out to me. And that is that in 2008, there were 1 billion internet devices.
Die übersetzen, aber es kommt. Ja, jetzt. Jetzt. Okay? Yep. Okay.
There were 1 billion internet devices in 2008. How many internet devices do you believe exist today? Anybody want to guess?
10 times more?
$10 billion. In 7 years, that's 10 billion. Cisco, the multinational technical company, reports that nearly 10 million devices exist today, and that is devices that connect people and information all over the planet. How many of those people using these devices identify with a specific faith tradition? How many of these people using these devices go to church? In the old days, as the video said, that it took radio 38 years to reach 50 million people. And it only took Facebook 2 years to reach that same number of people. How many people are we reaching by the church? I don't know about you, but I don't have 50 million people in my church. In the U.S., what statisticians are telling us is that there is decline in church attendance and decline in religious affiliation across the board. In fact, the largest group here, the largest group that's rising, if they were considered a religious group, is the spiritual but not religious. It's the largest growing group in America. And they are born after 1965, most of them. The numbers are telling us that while the attendance of church is declining, and while the identity with religious affiliation is declining, that people still hunger for God and for spiritual connection. So while there is a decline in the desire for what we traditionally know as church, the desire for God is rising. That's great news. So with all of the issues within the church, how worship should be or shouldn't be, what songs we should sing or shouldn't sing, people are hungering for God. In 2013, at the 29th General Synod of the United Church of Christ, our denominational leaders called Extravagance United Church of Christ into being. They announced that we would be undertaking the project of designing a geographically dispersed spiritual community online. Later that year, a group of close to 100 people gathered in Cleveland, Ohio, which is the headquarters for our denomination, and that is where I met Peter. And we gathered to vision together what this community could look like. What would Extravagance UCC be? We spent 3 days together, and out of that 100, a group of just over 36 people committed to being the Extravagance development team. So what is our work? Our work, many people wonder about this. How do we do church online? What does that mean? How are we using social media and the internet to have church? And this isn't in my notes, so please forgive me, interpreters. But I want to address something that was brought up yesterday. And again today, that there is no longer a division between the internet and church, or the world and church. It's really becoming the same thing. It's really about methods versus message. And so when we ask the question, how are we using social media and the internet to have church? I want to pose the question, how are we not? How are we not using the internet and social media to have church? The numbers are sobering. Less and less people are going to the physical space of a sanctuary. But that doesn't mean that those people still don't exist with the same questions of faith that they had 200 years ago. The more and more people look at the decline in worship attendance, the less they are focused on the fact that those people still exist. There are more and more people using social media, as we see. There are so many devices out there, and every single one of those people still yearn for God, still yearn for hope. They still look for goodness in the world amidst tragedies like the one that we just experienced in France, that we just heard of. Where are those people turning to for their answers? Are they running down the doors of the church saying, why did this happen? The first thing all of us did when I heard about it, especially at breakfast this morning, is I went to my phone. The United Church of Christ recognizes that while the method for reaching people will continue to evolve as new communications tools and technology continues to advance, that there is a central message that will never change. The good news. That's not as much German as you'll see in my presentation. The gospel. That is our message. That is the message of the church. That there is hope and life in a resurrected Messiah. Now, for those who disagree with a Messiah, for those who are still waiting for a Messiah, then obviously the conversation changes a little bit. But from a Protestant Christian perspective, there is hope. And giving us each an opportunity to live whole, abundant, and powerful lives is the gospel. That's really what we're focused on. It's not about the method. It's about the message. The message that the early church carried with them is still the message that we as a church carry with us today. Jesus lives. Jesus is alive through me, through you, through a brick and mortar church, through the internet. The calling of Extravagance United Church of Christ, as well as the support for other online ministries within the United Church of Christ, is the United Church of Christ's commitment to continuing the testament of God and sharing the good news with as many people as possible. Because let's face it, just because they stop coming to us doesn't mean that we should stop going to them. There are many expressions of church, and there are as many expressions of church as there are ways of being and people on the planet. So we recognize that online church might not be for everyone. And as we've heard numerous times, that's okay. Don't force something on someone that is not ready to receive it or willing to receive it. That's not what this is about. It's about providing a method for people who do use that as their primary method of communication. So we recognize that this won't fit everyone. We aren't saying that online church is better than any other form of church. But we are saying that using social and digital media to connect people to the message of the church fulfills our commandment given by Jesus to take the gospel message to the world. So how do we do it? Hopefully soon we'll have a button to match everything that we do, but this is the closest representation that I can find. Every button that's a social media icon is representative of a connection to a group of people, a platform of people. So, for example, we have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter account, we have a Pinterest profile, we are on Google+. Some people use LinkedIn, but I find that younger and younger generations don't use it simply because LinkedIn is like a professional's profile. You're looking for work, you're putting out your resume, and if you're under 20, none of those things really apply, right? But even WordPress. WordPress is the site that we use for our website. It allows us to blog, as well as have web pages, as well as connect donations through PayPal. These are all apps that can be on someone's phone, on their computer, on their mobile tablet. And every time we produce content for them, it comes through one of these apps. So, on Wednesdays, for example, we have what's called Thin Places. Our Minister of Digital Community, Reverend Kimberly Knight, hosts this every week. And it's a time for prayer and reflection. It's 1 hour long, and it happens through live stream. On Thursdays, I am the Minister for Digital Evangelism. I host a weekly Facebook retreat discussion. So it's similar to when a local church would have an adult forum or a Sunday school class where they discuss issues around the church or faith. That is the platform that I use every Thursday. And I use that through Facebook. On Sundays, our pastor, Dr. Joe Hudson, she hosts a live Bible study through Zoom for 1 hour. And I will take a moment to pause to describe how each of those happen, because I know that that's a large part of the questions that you all have. With Thin Places, for example, Kimberly has pre-recorded slides, music, things that she has gathered, and she in real time logs on, and there are people, perhaps all of you right now, if we logged on together, would be present with her at the same time. Different time zones for, everyone, but the same time. And she begins. Prayer happens. Reflection. Silence. Can you imagine 50 people connected online, watching a candle burn in silence? It's uncomfortable to think about doing nothing for most of us because, like Christina said, we're always plugged in, information overload. But on these programs, we have silence. Uncomfortable silence at times. Because if you can imagine, 1 minute of silence is awkward, but 5 minutes.
5 minutes
of silence. 3 times. So Kimberly will read the reflection, and then we have silence. And then Kimberly reads it a second time, we have silence. She reads it a third time, we have silence. And then afterwards, people offer their reflection, their reactions, questions that came up, struggles that they had. At the end of the discussion, then there is a time for prayer. People lift up their own concerns. People share things that have happened with them. For example, if someone experienced a death or the loss of a relationship. They say, pray for me. And they can type their prayers and their responses in, and they come up on a reel, and we're able to read them in real time as they're coming through. And then everyone's able to read them. And then we have people from all over the globe seeing that you want us to pray for your mom. You want us to pray for your relationship. You want us to pray for the deal for your new job. That's empowering for people. To know that there is someone praying for them. That there is someone out there for them. On Thursdays when I have my retreat, everyone knows what Facebook looks like, so I don't have that in the slide. But everyone logs in. I announce the time just to remind people. I place a Facebook ad. I pay for it. Facebook is free, but I place this ad. And what that does is it constantly feeds it to the top of the news feed so that everyone can see it all day long. And that way I can ensure the most amount of people to come every Thursday. And we have a different topic each week. Sometimes for several weeks we'll discuss one topic if it's a really intense conversation. For example, we talked about gender and sexuality in the church for 4 weeks. And that was our most attended discussion, if you can imagine why. But each week I begin by having people type into the comment box that I welcome them, tell them what the theme is, and ask them to make themselves known by introducing themselves. And then the thread lengthens as each person says, hello, my name is, I'm listening from Ohio, or I'm listening from Illinois, I'm listening from wherever. And so they just tell us where they are. One of the reasons why I have them do that is because it allows for the people that are online to see that they're not alone. Even if they are sitting in a space physically alone, that they're not alone. So then the second reason why I have them do that is that it makes the space sacred and intentional. Because let's face it, there's a lot of people in the group that don't participate in the retreat discussion. But they read it. They're watching the updates come. Some people say that they don't participate because they're shy. They don't feel like they have something of value to offer, but they appreciate that it's happening because they learned something new. With every group discussion, you have the 2 or 3 people that will dominate the conversation, that always have something to say, and you recognize I'm one of those people. I always have something to say. I always have a comment. I always have a question. And it's the same online. You have the group that just always has something to add to everything. And that's fine because it keeps the conversation going, but it's my job to also monitor that. So what I do is every 10 minutes, I post a new question, a new thought into the discussion. I might add a video, maybe under 2 minutes, because when you only have an hour, you're not going to play a 5-6 minute video. But 2-minute or 30-second video that is about a certain question pertaining to the topic. People can offer their responses. Most of the time, the conversation goes in a direction that I hope for it to go. I will say, for example, why do you think that the church has an issue ordaining women? And then all the women in the group will give their, explanations why. And then the men in the group will be very apologetic. And then, all these conversations will happen. But what's really happening underneath that is that people are becoming comfortable talking about the issues that they are struggling with in the church. Because the issue of the ordination for women in some religious circles is a very contentious one. It brings up a lot of painful memories for some women that had to accept positions that they were not really wanting because they couldn't go for the ones they did want. And all of that kind of baggage and negative energy and memories and experiences, if we brought all of that into the discussion, it wouldn't be lively. So if you just ask one question, people will take it wherever it needs to go. After 10 minutes, I post another question pertaining to the wider theme of the conversation. And then at the end, when there's about 15 minutes left, I pose maybe a picture of a candle, picture of praying hands, and I say, now it's the time for you to share your prayer requests or any concerns that you have. Some people will just hold that space open, while other people add their prayers or concerns. And then at the end of 8 minutes, I wait for 8 minutes, I pray. So I write a prayer that I think of in that moment. So it's nothing pre-scripted. It's very organic and pertains to the requests that were shared in that time. And then people see that prayer, and everyone then writes amen, 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 amen. And then I know that not only are they praying with me, they're praying with one another and for one another. And then at the end of that prayer, I thank everyone for their time, their attention. I tell them what we're going to discuss next week, tell them to invite friends along, and then they all thank me, say goodbye, talk to each other, have a great week, let's meet online, or are you going to be, wherever? And it's the same as what we would have in a local church called coffee hour, where after church, everyone's, are you going to be at soccer? I will be here. Are you going to go to the meeting? And everyone's talking and everyone's leaving. Goodbye, have a good week. It's the same thing. So we advertise dates and times. People log onto their devices or their computers, and we give them instructions for how to proceed. With our pastor, Joe, who does the live Bible studies for Zoom, it's a little bit more interactive. So with Kimberly, she has these slides that she plays. With me, I have Facebook and how I interact through the text that is written or typed. And with our pastor, Joe, what she does is she has, it's similar to Skype. So people can see her face to face. They can choose whether or not they want to turn on their computer. Oftentimes people do, but every once in a while you have a couple people that say, I don't like my hair today, so I'm not going to have my video playing. But they can still see us and hear us and communicate in real time. And so our pastor, Joe, will do the same thing. She'll welcome everyone. People will check in. She'll say, how was your week? And some people will say, I got the job, or, this worked out for me, or this, and people will share. And then after a few minutes, she prays and introduces the passage that we will be reading from in the Bible. She reads it. People give their feedback. She gives kind of not necessarily a summary, but a reflection. And then after that reflection, people pose questions, perhaps issues if they didn't like that text. If we read from the Old Testament and it says something about stoning someone, or, just something that's really difficult for us to want to believe existed but did, we talk about that. And some people will say, I really have a hard time believing that God told them to kill those people, or that God told this person to, take this action or invade this town. And we talk about why it's hard for us to feel that or think that. We don't try to make people believe one thing or another, because people will come to their own conclusions. But we do give space for people to talk about those things, because that's what we need. We need space. You couldn't have that kind of dialogue, at your office or at the bank. So this is where we can provide that space. At the end of Zoom Bible discussion with Pastor Joe, she asks for prayer requests and concerns people pray. And then she adjourns, invites them to come back next week and bring a friend, the same way that you would at a local church. So we give people an opportunity to share where they're from, what they're struggling with, what they're doing, what's on their minds, and we also have prepared for them some content to share with them so that it is organized, so that we are curating and facilitating an experience that we hope shapes how people engage with one another in their weeks and in their lives. So it's not just a bunch of chatter. It's not just a bunch of comments. We're actually trying to create this environment that nurtures the people gathered there as we share our values with one another so that they can be fully present for the time that we share together. So this is kind of what a setup looks like. It's computers, screens. When I'm on the road, if I am doing an event, another thing that Christina said that I wanted to bring up is that you really are always connected. There is almost no difference between work and home, because when you have this, accessibility, you're always on. And so when I'm on vacation, for example, I will set aside the time that I'm supposed to be online on Thursday nights. If I'm in a meeting or in the middle of something, then clearly I'll get someone else to do it. I won't walk away. But if I'm free, I'll set up my station. But if I'm traveling, I usually only have one laptop and then maybe my iPhone and my iPod or my iPad. So I have smaller devices, so I don't carry all those computers. But that's really what the setup is. And so we have people that we don't know what their setup looks like. We share, though, what ours looks like. And some people disagree with this because they say, oh, well, they don't want it to look, like it's your job. Well, it is my job. But the other part, and Cornelius shared this with us yesterday. Herr Furst, is that correct? But when you are inauthentic, people know when you're pulling the wool over their eyes. So I'm not going to pretend that I'm sitting in the middle of a rock garden with a fountain in the back and soft music playing. Now, if I am, great. But 9 times out of 10, I'm sitting.
But where is the fountain now?
But
just turn around.
Yeah.
On the other side.
But there is a candle.
Yeah.
I do have soft music playing, but low, because if it's too loud, then I'm distracted, right? It's a job.
But you have a fountain behind you, huh?
It's huge. And I'm sitting in my beach clothes, but one of the reasons why I share what this looks like for the community is, yes, so that they know that this is my job. But because I want them to know also that I take this seriously. I'm not surfing the web, ironing clothes, drinking mojitos and then typing in my prayer. I am there for them in this time. And this means something to me. It's special for me. I take my time to create my sermons. I take my time to research the texts. I take my time to make sure that the videos that I'm sharing are working. This is my primary method of church. So I want to make sure that this is sacred. And so when I share that picture, I want them to know that I am here with you in this space for this time. It's me and you. And I get to have the privilege of hearing some of the most intimate things. People share their joys, their struggles, their pain, because they know that I'm there. Now, I also have office hours, so I'm not always there, but then I might be on my phone texting them at the grocery store. But one of the ways that we observe holidays or communion, and I shared a little bit about this yesterday, is by having the shared meal called dinner church. And so we create a liturgy that people can download ahead of time. We tell them the time, the date. They invite their friends, their neighbors. We encourage them to. We also have on Pinterest an entire board called Dinner Church Resources. So it's filled with recipes for food to cook, because if you're going to invite people over, you want to present something special for them. And you might not always think of really exciting meals. So we have tons of recipe ideas. We have decoration ideas for centerpieces, for, conversation starters while your folks are gathering and you're waiting for us to log in. What are you going to talk about? What are you going to do? You're just standing around? No, you want to welcome them into your home. Have a seat. How was your day? Things that way. But some people wouldn't know. They get nervous or they need ideas. So we present Dinner Church Resources. We also, though, know that some people will bring children. And children won't be that focused on the liturgy sometimes. Sometimes kids are, but if they have their own separate table or if they have their own friends that are there, we have some conversation ideas for kids. Prayers that you can do with kids or activities that kids can do at the table. So they're not just coloring rabbits and circling, and playing. They're actual activities that are keeping them engaged, but also hopefully inspiring something within them as well. And so once it starts, people can log in. They see us. They see us with our food. They see us with our communion elements. They see us with everything. And we go through the liturgy along with them. And at the end of that, we have communion. Everyone has a set of elements at their table. And we have consecrated our elements. We provide the words of institution. We welcome people to the table. We welcome them to receive the blessings, the offerings of the table. And then they begin to pass those elements around to one another. Here is a picture of Circles of Grace Church, who joined us live for Dinner Church in October when we celebrated World Communion Sunday. They downloaded our liturgy, they invited their family and friends, and they had what looks like a really great meal, although, I can't say for sure, but it looks like it was a great meal. And they looked like they had a really great time. What's so exciting, though, is that they had a big screen similar to this size where they projected us so that everyone could see. So that they felt like it was just an extension of their table. And the idea is that all of these tables around the country really are connected. And we're all eating at the same time. We're praying at the same time. We're sharing communion at the same time. And someone says, how can you be a pastor to thousands of people? This is one of the ways that you can do that. But like I said yesterday, if this isn't for you, there are so many churches that serve communion and that offer meals. I can connect you to one of them. I tell them all the time. But I will near the end of the presentation, but I want to leave you with 3 points that I've learned through online ministry. The first is virtual community is real community. There is something powerful about connecting with someone from a different part of the world and sharing the same experience. We build relationships with one another. Online church will never replace a physical church. That's not the point. But for some, it is the only way of connecting because they don't know connection in a physical church. The second point is that the 20th century was about discipleship. The church opened its doors and people came to us so that we could teach them how to live like Christ. That was great. We did that job. We fulfilled that mission. The 21st century, on the other hand, has moved into the apostolic age, where, in other words, we go out and we live like Christ with the people. Extravagance UCC is our way of living like Christ with the people. There is an opportunity to walk along the road of Emmaus, to discover the rolled away stone at the tomb, to speak life into a dead Lazarus, to affirm the woman at the well who was rejected by all means from major society, and to tell her that she had a place and that for her there was water that would give her life eternally. These messages that we read in the Bible that give us hope, that decide things for us, they're still relevant today. We just get to live them out alongside people that might not come through the doors of a church, but would love to have a dinner party where they walk through a liturgy, where they get to feel like they are a part of this experience. So again, it's not about the method, it's about the message. And lastly, the third point is that Extravagance UCC is one vehicle, it's one method, and we are not limiting the movement of the Holy Spirit. We are open to as many fresh and innovative ways of being church as the Spirit reveals to us, simply because it's our job to be. As the church, the United Church of Christ is committed to creatively using whatever platforms become at our disposal to fulfill our core values, which are to continue the testament of God, to be a church of extravagant welcome, and to change lives. Everything we do needs to go back to those 3 points. And if they do, then we'll do it. And if it doesn't, then we won't. Someone says online church. The church leader said, I don't really know about that, but try it. See if it works. And if it does those three things, great. And that's really it. Continuing the Testament, extravagant welcome, changing lives. Everything we do as the church must always go back to our core values. Everything. Now, clearly, every specific church has its own, in the UCC, I know it's different here, but in the UCC, every specific church has its own gifts and strengths and sets of initiatives that they hold dear to them. So we know that, for example, a congregation of mostly 70 and 80-year-olds, they're not going to do online church. But what can they do? Whatever they can do, their job is to do it well and to make sure that it hits those 3 points. A church of mostly young people who would be bored to tears reading a hymnal, what can they do as the church? And how does it fit those 3 core values? If we're going to be on Facebook together, let's make sure that we're doing something on Facebook that meets those core values. If we're going on a mission trip together, if we're going to build a house for people, if we're going to pick up garbage along the highway, whatever we're doing as the church, let's make sure that it fulfills our core values. Jesus and the early church, they were constantly on the move. And I believe that's a sign of the Holy Spirit being present. When you're constantly trying new things, you're constantly evolving, you're constantly challenging yourself, you're constantly dealing with difficult situations and having tough conversations, you're constantly changing. And that's a sign of life. Because if you're not changing, if you're not moving, what are you doing? And that's a truth, not a judgment. Because all of us, we live and we die. But while we are alive, we must live. As long as there is breath in each of us, there is the opportunity for us to inspire life within the world around us. So thank you for your attention, your time. On behalf of myself and my colleagues in the United States, thank you for your hospitality and your warm welcome. I am now available for whatever questions you may have, and I appreciate so much the reception that you have given me. So thank you.